Okay. Hi, everybody. Sorry that this is like 1 minute late, but thank you all for hopping on with us to talk about this animation workshop that Ken Fountain, right? Has
Fountain, just
Fountain. I like Fountain. It sounds fancier.
got flair.
A little bit. To talk about good poses and all this other stuff for you guys. I am not really an animator, so I honestly don't know too much about this topic, but Ken has been around forever, and has worked on so many things, so he's going to introduce himself in a bit. I'm just going to mention that the live stream is always about 2 or 3 minutes delayed. So if you ask a particular question or we ask you guys a question, just note that we are about 2 to 3 minutes ahead of you. As you can see, a couple of people have already started using the questions thing. It's not really for comments, it's more for questions, but I'm going to be monitoring the questions as well as Ken, and just write in your questions right in there and we will get to them. You can ask us anything and everything, and if we don't want to answer them, we just won't answer them. So there. So Ken, why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. So, hi. My name is Ken Fountain. I am an animator at large currently. I have worked, well, I mean, just to kind of go off of what you were saying, whether or not I've been around forever is relative. I actually came to animation kind of late, relatively late in my life. I really didn't start animating until maybe my early mid-30s. I've been a visual artist before then, and I started way back as wanting to be an actor. That was kind of what I was in school and left school wanting to do, and throughout my late teens and early 20s was pursuing it, but then, found the rock and roll, so I was doing that for most of my adult life. I've actually spent most of my adult life touring in bands, so.
What bands? Can we
I
look you
know.
up and listen to you?
I don't know. I had a band called Birds at the End of the Road that was around we were together for about 11 years. Just toured the United States college circuit kind of stuff. And then the band after that, Red Elephant, which was on Aware Records, which is a Chicago label. And we were together for 3 or 4 years, I forget. And through there, just put out a handful of records and stuff like that and toured them. And so that was kind of my pursuit. So inside of that, I had to design promo for things, and I began designing promo for other bands and for bigger labels, and worked for a lot of really good labels and
Oh,
skills
no.
that way, and stumbled into animation. Literally, like my saxophone player was like, one, we needed a Flash website, so we made a little animation for that. But then he's like, hey, let's make a short film, and I started making a short film with him, and I was like, this is it, I'm done. And I literally fired my design clients. I had my last retirement show with the band like a couple of years later and said, I'm going to be an animator. This is what I want to do. And worked in the Chicago advertising for quite a while, studios like Calabash, and had a lot of fun. Then got invited to LA and worked at DreamWorks for a few years, and that was a blast. Got to work on, the final Shrek and Megamind and Puss in Boots and How to Train Your Dragon stuff, and what else? Monsters vs. Aliens is when I got there.
What was your favorite thing you've worked on?
Shrek was actually I was not a Shrek fan, but the production was so fun, so I had a blast on that. But Megamind turned out to be like this surprise, seriously fun learning experience.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd you learn from it?
Just because it spanned the gamut of styles, it was really wacky and cartoony, and then all of a sudden it would be very dramatic and super serious, and so the animators that I get to learn from on that were amazing. I mean, it was so fun, and yeah, making a living in it is a thing. I was a freelancer for a few years before that, and kind of scraping by, so there are very few salaried positions. And in fact, I was 40 years old, 39, 40 years old. That was the first salary I'd ever made in my entire life. I was working at DreamWorks. So it's tough. You really, to be an independent, which I am again now, you gotta hustle, and really work a lot and keep after your clients and charge properly, and and not let people take advantage of you and all of that. So anyway, so that's the kind of the clarification. I've been doing it for a long time thing, but I'm now a teacher as well. So since then, I joined forces with iAnimate.net, and I've been teaching there for.
Is it like an online?
That's an online school, because I actually attended Animation Mentor as well. That's what kind of got me the leg up into the feature film industry, because I was like, I want to hone my skills, but I also kind of want to meet people, and get myself in front of people, and that did that. So I really loved online schools, and Jason Ryan, my friend, started one and asked a bunch of us to join and be teachers. So I've been teaching at that for about 4 years now, a little over 4 years. And it's a blast. But the cool part of it is that it teaches, like you're forced to have to articulate how you animate and what you're thinking about and what you think is important and how you get performances and how you connect and how you make people laugh and how you make people cry, all that stuff. And so I think it's made me a little bit better. And I've also think I found kind of a knack for explaining stuff. So, so since then I've been going around. This is kind of the segue into what I want to talk about today, because on top of doing that, then that kind of has gotten me invited to small conferences and studios around the country to come give lectures and talk about this very kind of thing. And studios and schools that are doing way different kinds of things, from really high-end CG stuff down to the most basic limited animation. We got to bust this out really fast. But I've found there is a common thing that you can teach, in that. And so that's what I want to talk about today. And just as a quick aside, I actually sell tutorial videos too. So splatfrog.com that you see in this little thing here, that's the site where I've got tutorial videos that I sell. And I'll also, and just before I forget, if anybody's out at CTN this year, I have a workshop that I'll be doing at CTN as well. So with live mime artists, which will be a blast.
So yeah, everyone out there, Ken was nice enough to do this little 1-hour class for free for us, even though he does sell them. So it would be really awesome if you all go check out his site and see the other animations and tutorials that he has on there. But I know you all have lots of questions on like pay rates and working as an animator and all this, like working at DreamWorks, all this amazing stuff. If Ken likes, we can set up another more in-depth into what his background is and how he got to where he was. We can totally do that. But this particular live stream is about this animation workshop. So if you'd like, I can set up a further live stream down the road, but I would like to limit right now the questions and going actually into the workshop, if that's okay with you, Ken.
I'm happy to do anything. I like awesome. Having this community, so this is cool.
I love the community too. It's awesome.
That's nice. All right, so what I want to talk about, and I'll share my screen with stuff in a second here, but especially when I go talk to kind of smaller studios and talk about when they're expressing we've got to get stuff done really fast and we don't have tons of time and tons of people and tons of money to put into real animation or really intricate or sophisticated character design or even designing the story. It's like what is it that we can use as an essential thing that can get our point across? And it made me think of Frederator, because everybody on this is an independent, including myself as an independent animator. And when you work by yourself, there's only so much you can do. A DreamWorks picture takes hundreds of people with hundreds of processors of millions of dollars. So it's trying to get even close to that quality is impossible, and I don't think most of us are trying to either. There's a style in the independent art, but the title I think we put on this hangout was that poses matter, and that's what I want to That's what I try to emphasize, is that if there's something you can do, it's connect with your audience somehow. And I think even limited animation, even people who can't draw, like, I don't consider myself the greatest cartoon, not even close, but capturing a certain, just capturing something from your character that communicates a body language and an emotional state that in that moment could get you a bigger laugh. It could get the person involved in your story a little more. It could, all of those things are really important inside the pose. And here's the comparison, the metaphor I want to bring up before I pull up, the silly slides. But a lot of us, what we're working with is rigged characters. We're essentially moving puppets around. But the difference between a puppet and something we believe are alive is that the force in a puppet, like a marionette or a rod puppet or even a Muppet that has a little thing on its hand, is that all comes from the outside. We can tell that, like, strings are pulling things, and it's not, when a puppeteer is really, really good, you forget and you believe that this thing is alive. Our job as animators is to make people believe that all of this stuff is coming from the inside. No matter how crude your character is, this thing has to have some sort of emotion and force and physical something that comes from the inside of them. And your character's pose, even if you were like a comic strip artist, your pose matters a lot. So let's kind of go into the lecture-y stuff here. Let me see if this screen share works. Let's do desktop. Hey, I can do desktop too.
Yeah, you can do a bunch of different windows if you like.
Nice. So you can see my little cursor down there. Okay, let's pull up. Let's pull this up. Bam. All right. So this is actually a little excerpt from a lecture I do somewhat regularly. And I think that, it's the cliche, but ultimately everything that you're doing is a story. You're not putting anything up on screen unless you're telling somebody a story. Even if it's just a fart gag, it's still a story about a fart gag. And there's still things that you want your audience to relate to. That's the big thing. So kind of the way that the lofty way I like to present it is that you don't just tell it. You're not just telling a story. You're inviting somebody to be involved in it. And even South Park, has a sense of empathy for the characters. We understand Cartman's, frustration with how much the world sucks and everything's stupid, and then everybody else's feelings about other friends. There's just these subtleties in that story that tell us that. So, we become involved, and obviously they bring in pop culture and stuff like that. But I think even if you watch Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or any of those, they base themselves on really beautiful holds and poses, a lot of them, and I think that really gets your idea across. And in order to get that, you kind of got to start with reality a little bit. In CG, I talk a lot about building your poses using real mechanics, like literally moving your puppet around, posing them how the body poses, starting with the feet and the legs and moving your way up the body and letting this pose grow from the core of the body. And a lot of that involves like really studying physics. And a simple drawing should also be attached to some sort of real physics as well too. There's tons of things. Everybody out there has gone to art school and all that kind of stuff. About gesture and line of action through a body. But I think we often forget some of the other things that your audience reads off of the simplest of drawings, like, where is the character's center of gravity? Are they in balance or out of balance? Are their muscles relaxed or are they stiff? Where are those points of resistance? If they're pushing something, if they're standing, if they're jumping, if they're slamming into a wall, what is that? Could you get a better read off of your drawing if you were thinking about those kinds of things and thinking about them all at once and then deciding which ones were the most important to caricature? you know. And a lot of this comes from, you know, thinking about the natural world, thinking about physics, and thinking about the interior of the body. You know, if you're a drawing person, you study anatomy. So if you're a fine artist, you know, of course you want to know you sit in a life drawing class, and, you know, sometimes you draw the skeleton and you draw the muscles sinewing around them and all that. It's really important to life drawing to know these things. However, and well, let me just say that, like, yeah, this the obvious is that it goes through classical drawing, but as you kind of start to abstract it a little bit more, you know, you can see where the really great comic book artists come up with these really awesome dynamic poses, because they understand how the muscles of the body work in many different creatures, I would argue. And you can begin to abstract that even more and start bringing it into the more world that we're used to, of this stylized, you know, beautiful animation. This is kind of what we're seeing here is like more Disney-esque, but still, there's a sense of weight. Like if I look at a character like this, let me see if I can get my little annotation tools out here. Do I have it installed in this machine? No, I don't. Okay, I'll have to go with the cursor. You know, like there's weight on that hip, and that fabric has weight, and this arm on this hip pushing the shoulder up, like that person's leaning on it or she's leaning on it, you know, and relaxing this arm and pointing that there's a story in that gesture instantly, and we don't even get to see her face. You know, she doesn't even have hair. But get it, because we understand the insides of our body and we feel the inside of that character's body. Even to me, like the simplest cartoon has anatomy. You know, I think you need to really understand where the knees bend and where the hip joints are and how they use their torso and how they balance in relationship to maybe their big feet or their tiny feet and their giant head. You know, like those are weights and mechanics that relate to each other, even in a pose that is standing still, you know, which most of ours kind of have to, because we don't have a lot of time to do a lot of frames, you know. But if you can put that idea of a functioning anatomy of some sort in your character, it really adds to the appeal, but also to the empathy, to us understanding what that emotion is right at that moment. Even if it's a comedy gag, it still has to be driven from something human, you know. And just as a quick aside, I always remember when I went to go see the Picasso exhibit when it came through Chicago, whatever, 10 years ago, however long that was. And up until that point, abstract art to me, I always had that same opinion of, like, you know, I could have done that when I was 5. Why do I care? Who cares? And then you realize that Picasso was a brilliant naturalist artist who took that and abstracted it, and you start to understand what he abstracted, and it says something totally different. And I argue maybe it went too far, because it should have connected. Like, I should have been able to look at it and gotten that. I think as cartoonists, that's our gig. You know, like our audience should know, they should relate to it, but know it's being cartooned. You know, and we should try to be under the surface as keen of an observer and maybe even as skilled of an executor as a fine artist to make our cartoons really kind of, you know, come to life. So what are those things? You know, what are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm putting together poses? The two biggest things are force and weight. If anybody's gone to animation school, you know, that's the first thing you study. Your character should have weight, and usually your teacher's going to be like, yeah, it's great, but the walk doesn't have weight, that ball doesn't have weight. You know, you fix your spacing and, you know, all the kind of gestures through it, and you try to get it. And there are tricks to that, but a lot of it comes out of, again, just observing the natural world. More importantly, where is the force coming from? You know, if we go back to, like, if I go back to this guy right here, you know, it's a very static pose. There's not anything going on. If I took that, but I can see where that would go, like, as that began to move, anticipated to move, I could start to see, because I know where the points of resistance are with the ground, I know where the muscles are building up energy, I could start curving that spine and ducking that head and pushing one of those shoulders up a little higher, and I could start to see where that force was going to go, and that would create a readable anticipation for movement. And all of this stuff, all of this movement we're trying to describe, even in our still drawings, we're trying to describe movement, pretty much relates to one thing. So if you could, so all of this technical, mechanical, and anatomical stuff could pretty much boil down to a single relationship that you could think about between your character's pose and gravity. And sorry, I have text there that animates in, but I'm not running it right now. This is the whole idea, is gravity. Every pose choice you make is your character's body relationship with gravity. Are their feet on the ground? Yes. Is their body in balance with those feet? Yes or no? If it's not, where is the center of balance that's being pulled down by gravity? And what does that start to tell your audience? That they're about to move, that they're trying to stop themselves from moving, that their muscles are loose instead of rigid and they're about to fall. All of these, you know, subtle nuances in just simple lines and relationships are going to pretty much just talk about your character's relationship with gravity. And that's kind of what we spend our whole day doing, if you think about it, is, you know, trying to sit up or stand up or lie down and not fall off things, you know, and situating ourselves against that force, you know. So anyway, what we read our relationship to gravity is pretty much our weight. You know, it's balance and force and all that, but that all comes kind of down into the weight of our character. And to me, how we are manipulating our body's weight is a telltale sign about what emotion we are feeling. If we are in control of ourselves, we tend to be very balanced. And we tend to be very in control of our center of mass and our center of balance. And if we are more out of control emotion, like hysteria or, you know, or even just sadness and crying, you know, there's that wobble, there's that off balance, there's that limpness to the muscles. You know, it's not a rigidity, and you can string all of these silhouettes, all of these poses together to pretty much tell a story, even without words. You know, you could just pantomime the thing onto a story, and you don't even need to tell a joke, you know. So imagine that if you do have a really clever script, you know, and a really clever gag or a joke or whatever, imagine how much more you could plus that if you were thinking about how much you could push the poses of your very simple characters. You know, again, for the art schoolers out there, or anybody who's taken a lot of life drawing class, one of the biggest things you learn is gesture, you know, and doing drawings as gesture drawings, and really getting the essence of things going. You know, getting that twist through the spine, or getting the relationship between the force against the heel of the foot all the way through a fingertip, you know, or even the force that's coming out in the arms during a baseball swing, or whatever it is. That gesture that even good, like, Sunday morning comic strip artists, you know, do very, very well, can come through in your still drawings. And I'm going to pull up some examples of these that I really love. But, you know, that goes back to one of the simple things as animators we can think about, is the line that goes through the body. That's the gesture. You know, if I look at this line that I've drawn, you know, I'm pulling it from, it's somewhere between these two feet, the two heels that are pushing against the ground, and it's twisting up through the head. That head is the finish line of this particular gestural pose, because what we pay attention to most is the force coming up through and that head looking somewhere. And all of that, this idea of gesture, is not simply to look good, even though it may. It's because you want to communicate your character's intent. All of this stuff they're doing with their body in relationship to gravity is communicating what they want, what they desire, what they're looking at, what they're reacting to, what they're listening to, who they're talking to. That gesture that goes through the body, even if it's just a straight line that's leaning in one direction, goes a huge way to just pull me into the scene and make me believe, hey, I'm watching people. I'm watching thinking beings do some stuff, So what is that? Here, I want to pop up some examples of what that might look like. I love this Twitter feed. If I can, where did I put it? Oh, it's up in here. Hang on, I'm going to pop over to, I can probably just pull this off, actually. All right. This Model Sheets Twitter feed is one of my favorites to kind of look at.
What's the handle? Is it just at Model Sheets?
At Model Sheets.
All right, cool.
It's fun. They kind of like they've grabbed a couple of my just project sketches that I've tweeted. They kind of just grab stuff from around, and some people have good archival stuff from classic cartoons. And again, I know that most of us are not the 9 old men. Most of us are not Chuck Jones or Tex Avery. We're not great cartoon artists, but the essence of what they're doing is so powerful. I mean, you can look at even just these poses of the genie right here, and you can see the lines of action that go through there, the curves. Yeah, all that, the C curve, like the reversals of the C curves, and a lot of what that's doing is pointing his eyes at stuff or pulling his eyes away from things. It's showing me immediately the intent in his face, the intent in his eyes, by using this meaty, squishy, mass that's having that's communicating. And so all of these poses, I don't have to. They tell a story without me even listening to what they have to say. Even all the Warner Brothers stuff always had. I mean, if you think about anatomy, I mean, you could, just like that little slide I had, pull out a spine and hip joints, and I can see the weight of the cloth on those costumes, so I can tell they're kind of like oversized, and there's so many things I get out of one simple drawing. And I love this one. He just posted this one today. Like even the classic kind of really tubey stuff always has motion and weight and anatomy, even though the joints are still very bent and tubed. If you look at the drag of this little, these are tiny, I know, sorry, but the drag of Oswald's ears, or the fact that when he crouches, his core needs to go back. And I'm going to talk about that next, this idea of seeing where the core goes. Look at this one where he's leaning and hyperextending his knees to blow a kiss at somebody, and so the knees are hyperextended. Of course, that's breaking the rules. But because his feet are big and his head extends over there, his butt has to go a little bit behind the center of balance. And this pose, just from toes all the way up to his nose, just that torso line, is pretty much, it's almost exactly in balance, except for he wants to go forward just a little bit. And the fact that those arms are back, yeah, it's cool looking, it's very dynamic looking, but that's also mechanically correct because we're offsetting the weight, So cartoon artists are scientists in a way. Like good cartoonists really know how to kind of create. I love this one too, where he's sticking his pelvis forward, and everything is pretty much in balance. And this pose should be in balance. This is standing still, looking cute, as opposed to throwing himself forward. And everything is weighted in this run forward. Or this one's gesturing in front. Off balance along that gestural line. It's beautiful stuff. It blows my mind just to think that for the history of cartoon, those cartoons that have really reached out and grabbed us are the ones that are thinking of these things. They're not just quick drawings. They're thoughtful, quick drawings. You know? And I wish I could do that. I can't. I'm great at that, and I'm still trying to practice. But even this guy, this is a very simple kind of crude-ish. You know, this isn't Warner Brothers, and yet I want to go to my drawings for a second, because I want you to pay attention to the relationship of where his feet are on the ground and where his butt is and where his head is. This kind of triangle right here. This is somebody paying attention to a body's balance. And I know that this character is not moving right there. This character is in some sort of pain or frustration and standing there just wallowing in it. This one, even though he's in some sort of pain and distress, he's going a little bit off balance over his left foot and could potentially, so I can imagine the next thing he does. He goes, and falls and maybe walks or stumbles or falls to the ground and cries or whatever. You know, there is so much you can get out of that one moment. Oh, ooly stuff, cool. Look at that. Just with circles, he's pulling that off. Look at the flow through all of these. So, I was looking at this one the other day too. The cat stuff is great. Old Popeye stuff, more modern stuff. This is a really great site to look at. So, in practice, what does that mean? Like, how do I use it in practice? So often I will thumbnail things, like an animated thumbnail pass to plan out an animation. Probably most do this because everybody's working in digital animation software. So of course you rough it out first. So this is my argument in practical forms is, no matter what your character looks like let's say, you know, you have like somebody who's got like a nice round head and a very swoopy little body, and maybe they've got long spindly legs, and maybe like tubey arms that come off of their thing. You know, maybe this is your person. I don't know. Let's just say
Dr. Seuss character a little bit.
So there's that guy. There's his feet. Okay, so let's give him a little piece of hair, because then we'll have some little secondary action if we want to use it. So this little guy, you know, and then let's do another guy. Like maybe you just have a dude that's made out of boxes, you know. So he's got a head, and he's got, you know, I don't know. Let's say he's got arms, or you'd probably make him with an elbow and some hands. So I want these guys to be totally different and show how you would still, well, yeah, we'll just give him legs without hips. He won't have a hip basket. Okay, so there's that, really quick. So even these two guys, we're basing them on, you know, human anatomy. And move this guy up a little bit. Which is what we do commonly. I mean, there's characters we have that are animals and stuff too, but let's just take this human example at first. You know, I want to start thinking about, well, so there's his legs, so this is kind of like the core of his body, his hips are kind of attached right there. That's a nice thing to think about. You know, he does, I don't see his knees, I didn't draw little bumps for them, but he's got knees and he's got elbows and he's got a neck, you know, somewhere in there, and you know, maybe this is where his lungs are if he starts to breathe or something. I want to just start imagining that stuff. I mean, all that stuff can happen in here too. He's got a neck, he's got shoulders, even though I can't see them. Maybe that's not part of the character design. This might be where his shoulders attach. You know, and that's where his elbows attach, in between that space. And this is where his wrists attach, in between that space. Same thing all down here. I'm thinking through first, what's he built like? And this, you know, I might even say there's a spine inside there if I need to use it, and start thinking of it that way. Maybe it connects right there. It's nice things to have on the back burner. So if I go to start animating, start coming up with poses for, let's say, this guy. Let's start this dude, the roundy guy. let's say he's saying hello in some way. So I'm going to have him looking happily, up here. Hey. I'm just going to have him like waving hi. And then he sees something and is surprised by it. Like that's going to be my story here. So I'm going to start thinking of where's that spine. Probably he's going to be leaning forward. So I just want to draw that line and go, okay, he's leaning forward and he's a little bit, if his feet were somewhere in here, then he's a little bit ahead, of that that center of balance, and he can gesture out and lift that arm up and maybe wave up here, saying hey up there. And if he's got this much weight out in front of him, I haven't even drawn his feet yet. I've already got to think of how does he have to counter that. So I want to put maybe his other arm back there. And that, again, it's a nice dynamic pose, but it's also in balance a little bit. And maybe I keep him really cute, and I want to just keep his feet, and I'll do that hyperextended knee thing, and I know his waist is like right about there. So already he's got this nice, and again, I'm not the cartoon artist of the year here, but just quickly, like that's him waving. In fact, I can look at this and I can go, I think I should put one foot a little bit farther out and maybe point that toe a little bit because he's a little bit off balance, and that might get me a little bit more of a dynamic feel to it. So I'm pushing this toe a little bit farther out and keeping him in balance, and it's just more interesting to look at, I would think. And then now so the final pose he's gonna go to is that he's gonna be surprised. So what's the difference between those two? If I'm going to tell a story, I want to show contrast in these poses. I want to show contrast in the gesture and in the balance and in the force going through the body, even the simple lollipop head guy. So let me erase that. So I'm going to go from there to, well, he's probably going to turn around and go up. In fact, I'm going to go like this. I'm going to make him like afraid, and leaning backwards a little bit. So there's a lot of things I got to think through that. If I'm looking at the proportions of him, and I want him looking down. Let's put some wrinkles in his head and the big surprised eyes and maybe he's whatever. But so now I'm going to go down the body. I'm going to be like, well, what is it? What's that contrast? So I'm going to go, what are his muscles doing? How is he balanced? Where is that? So right now I've already said that the force is going up. He's pushing up. So I'm creating that straight line of action. And I maybe want to counter that, make the muscles rigid and think the opposite of relaxed, which is tight. And so I can start with the shoulders and put the shoulders up, and I can put those arms like out and maybe put these hands in little fists, out here with the thumbs on the side, and just think through. And there's his torso. Then his spine could be completely rigid. Now I could put him up on his toes, and you say, well, what's this cartoon? I can make him balance up there. He could be in the motion, and he might be like bouncing up and down and heading backwards. But let's just say this is a pose he's going to hold. No. Screw it. We're going to say that he's going to be in motion. So we're doing cartoon here. So I'm going to actually put him up on his toes. I'm going to push this idea of that force going up his body. So I'm thinking of force. I am thinking of balance because I want him to look like he's falling that way a little bit. He might stumble and come down to like a crouched pose. Like he might come down to he might stumble through and come down to maybe like here, and then his back is all crouched up and his knees are crouched up, and he's got his arms in and his fists are, it's just really messy quick, but maybe he's really worried. Whatever. So he falls and he stumbles and crouches down into that. But this drawing, you know, that I want to say that he's going off balance. I want the force to go up. I'm looking at, even though there's no muscle definition in my drawing, I'm still asking the question, what are his muscles doing, and does my audience know what his muscles are doing? So you know, flipping between, and I'd have, you know, some sort of reaction in between there. At least my story poses, if I went forward, have contrast. They have physics thought kind of going through them a little bit, as crude and stickman as they are, you know. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, yeah, you know what? Because I went for the crouch in this one and I'm really having fun with knees, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to say that I want, you know, I want a straight leg and possibly a relaxed bent leg, and it feels a little more natural for this scene. Then I can bring that line up, and there's his little stomach. You know, and then you can see, now it's cartoon, so we could say, okay, well, now I can go even farther. I can go as far as I want. You know, I can make his eyes as big as I want. I can stretch his head as big as I want, you know, and go make him giant. Make that mouth like huge and go crazy with him, and make a giant tongue come out, you know. There's tons of stuff. I could even have fun and get these fingers even more kind of crinkly up there. Why not? You know, but I've started with real physics. I started with real body stuff, and I'm cartooning it as opposed to just coming up with a funny, weird drawing. And somebody I always think of is an animator that I'm really only friends with on Facebook and stuff, but Elliot Cohen, who's like he's been a Frederator, you know, since the early days. He does all these really weird cartoons. He's the box head and round head guy. If you look at, he's been putting up drawings for Inktober, so he's been doing all these tons of really quick, you know, they're either really dirty little drawings or they're just funny animal drawings or something. But all of his lines still have fat and muscle and bone and stuff inside of them, and they still have posing and balance and dynamics. And I'd really like, just as an example of, I mean, he's a really good artist, but when he draws very crudely, you know, there's still like this training, you know, behind it that's really beautiful to see in these really crude, you know, rude and sometimes offensive drawings. It's great. So anyway, this is the simple thought that I love to plant with people who are bummed that they have so little time that they can't do enough animation to make what you're doing as good as the stuff that they like. I get this, that's a weird way of saying that, but you know, because we see things out there that we like. Oh, God, I wish I could do that. You know, most of the time it's because it takes time. But there is a place you can go with your drawings, the few that you're able to do, that don't require as much time as they require care and thought and study, you know, and not like art school study. Just look around, you know, and check things out and wonder why the machines of life work the way they do, you know. Anyway, that I'm gonna come back to my where's that? There we go. So that's if we round it back to this little phrase here, this is the gist of what I was saying, is that when you take the time to do things that people can relate to physically, and sorry, I'm going to break my flow at the end here because there's an aside to this. When I say physically, I mean like chemically as well. Like when we look at facial expressions and we look at body language, there is evidence, like MRI evidence, that we actually, the chemical reactions in our body, well, what we do is we sort of mimic it. Our muscles barely mimic it. We mimic facial expressions, we mimic body expressions, and that's how we feel what other people are feeling. There are people in this world who don't have that ability and that can't read facial expressions because they don't have that connection. But most of us have the connection. So when we look at a person's face, we look at a person's body, we feel it in our own body, understand what they're feeling. And if you're trying to tell a serious story or a scary story or an obnoxious story or a funny gag or anything, unless I understand, unless I relate to it, I'm not going to be as entertained as you want me to be. So that's something that just I kind of keep in the back of my brain most of the time. So I just wanted to bring back to this idea of empathy is still our ultimate goal in our poses. So I want to. There's a lot of these questions popping up, so I don't want to ignore them.
Yeah. So this is a good point to answer some of these questions because we can also
actually,
just wait.
Hang on one second. We didn't do the boxy guy. Hang on a second. I was doing a very organic guy. Hang on. There's the one point I forgot to mention is I love Minions. There's characters that I think those characters epitomize the essence of animation to me so much because they're the simple, limited, and yet they're using all the principles of it. So let's talk about if we even put this box character down to a little guy that was like this, that just had, and maybe he's like that. He's got like this crazy thing, and he's got like a little mouth like that, and maybe he's got little feet, and that's it. Maybe that's your whole character is this box. This box can still have a spine. This box can still have facial muscles that we understand. This box can still have balance. This box still has a core. So if this box is standing on one foot, I need to go, okay, well, I want to balance that up, but I want to probably bend that spine up a little bit and probably put that leg out, and then maybe his eyes are, his eyes, let's leave them over there. Sorry. And then he's very happy about leaning, so he's up there. So I can go through this just like Minions do. They don't stay a little bouncy solid box. They have anatomy to them. They have a core that they're balancing on. Even these eyes equate to a mass and weight, so that when I'm, the basic squash and stretch, when I'm preparing to jump, you want to squash that mass and squash those eyes, and maybe make sure that these knees bend, and then when he jumps, get him, really go for it. Get this, and just have a blast. Get those. Think about the anatomy of those legs. That's going to come down, and those heels are going to. You still want those heels and those feet to point, and they might actually bend a little bit as he goes. But I'm still saying that force is coming from these feet. It's pushing up onto the core, so that core goes up. These feet drag behind. They're a mass that are actually dragging. And then I'm stretching it for a lot of reasons, but stretching it because the mass has weight. So it's, the top of it pushes up, and then it makes the top of it go up higher. It's kind of that bouncing effect, and then you're smearing it because of the camera shutter and all that kind of stuff. You're just doing cartoon smears, but it still starts from what did these feet do to send up through the legs to push that core, to push that mass on top, and then what's that doing to the eyes? Maybe when he comes down, like he's on his way back down, but the eyes are left up here just for a little bit because they have weight, and you can think of basic Newtonian physics that things with weight take a little bit longer to accelerate and turn around, and they're separate objects, and maybe these feet, one foot comes down and stretches itself down while this leg is up while he's landing, and maybe he's got a little frown because he's a little worried on his way down. Um, so don't, and all of this, like I could do, this could literally be 5 poses in my animation that I could just click through. And if there was enough information in there, thoughtful information, my audience is going to giggle because they get it. Then you gave them something extra too, all because you're recognizing this might actually be a living being with skeleton and muscles and weight and fat and stretchiness and hair and whatever they got, you know. So anyway, this is my ode to minions. All right, so I'm sorry. Let's check out what the questions are.
No, that's totally fine. I love how animated you get about posing. It's really.
I love it because you should be like sitting there sketching and being like, ha, ha, ha. I mean, that's how. Because if you're still laughing, like take for instance a job at DreamWorks. There's some questions about it, but my God, you're spending 2 weeks on 5 seconds worth of footage. I mean, that's jaw-dropping. Like, I remember I first got there, you know, and the producers are like, do you need more time? And I'm like, really? You're really going to give me more time? But it's because they want that thought, they want that detail. And I used to get comedy shots a lot. I get like the weird jokes. It was always my thing. But if 2 weeks later I was still pulling the shot up and laughing at it, then I knew it was a success, you know. So you should be having fun.
How did you get the job at DreamWorks?
Yeah, I saw that up there. That was, I actually want to say that I got it because of doing the Animation Mentor program. I was animating already when I started the thing. I just wanted to kind of learn from guys that were working in feature, and I wanted to work in feature. But then I just, like 4 semesters in, my one of my teachers, who's now a friend of mine, he just said, you should apply. We need you for this movie. And literally within a week, they called and said, here's your offer. And I was like, oh crap, I gotta move to LA. And you know, so it was purposefully accidental. Like I went into Animation Mentor going, I'm gonna get a job. I want to get a job, and I want to do features. So, you know, it's like a 12-week audition. That's the way I always think about it. So, yeah, so that was that. And then they were asking about what animation program am I teaching. I teach at ianimate.net, which is just another one. Jason Ryan started that school, and it's really, really fun. It's a little looser than AM. Like we teach mostly like people who are we teach foundation, but most of our students are working professionals that just want to get their skills better and you know, so they can get a better job or get better shots or you know, whatever. So, and let's see. So, and what day am I at CTN? I'm there all weekend, and I got a talk on Saturday at around 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock or somewhere in the middle of the day on being an independent animator. So I'd love to have Frederator people there. That'd be awesome.
Why don't you explain a little bit about what CTN is? Because not everyone might not know.
CTN is Creative Talent Network, and they do an expo every year in Burbank, California that is all animation. I mean, they've got this giant expo hall, 2 expo halls really, of illustrators and character designers and animation schools and big studios and that are doing real reviews, and other people are selling their books and selling their prints, and it's just this animation arts you know, orgy. It's awesome. And then outside, then there's all these theaters and you know, presentation rooms that animators and will come and talk, essentially, like people as awesome as Glenn Keane to people as insignificant as me, you know, or like, and everything in between are giving workshops on what they do or just doing interviews or doing, you know, it's really fun. So I highly recommend it. It's 3 days. It's whatever, November 21st through the 23rd, and then Sunday the 23rd is my workshop, where this one's going to be fun. It's kind of on what we just talked about today. It's about pantomime acting, but we're going to I've got 2 pantomime artists that are going to be on stage with me helping to illustrate the whole thing. So that's going to be really fun. And sometimes Siri's talking to me. That was weird.
She wants to be part of the live stream. She's jealous.
Yeah, she is. What's going on? And then somebody was wondering what part did I have in the animation process. I was actually on the animation.
Quick question, Ken. Can we turn off the screen share, or are we still gonna?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I'm
okay. I'd like to see your face while you're talking.
How do I do that? Let's see.
Perfect. It's done.
Oh, it's there. Okay, good. Yeah, hi. So, okay. So somebody was asking what part in the process that I was actually on the animation team at when I was at DreamWorks, and yeah, I worked at the Glendale studio. There's two of them. They have one up in Redwood City up by San Francisco. And yeah, I was just one of the people. Yeah. And then somebody wants to know how I started. Let's see, I want to make sure I'm not missing.
Well, there's a few questions directly related to posing that I'd like to
let me know.
ask. So Sif asks us, or asks you rather, because I have no idea, any advice for coming up with good, varied poses for characters, and what do you do to keep things fresh for your characters?
Yeah, I think my first rule is the CSI rule. You know, where you're working with the C-shaped curves, your S-shaped curves, or your straights. And if that, like, look at the differences from pose to pose in your character and see if you can force yourself to come up with something that is different from, you know, if one pose is kind of bent over and C-shaped, could the next one be straight and then the next one relax into more of an S-shaped curve all the way through the body? That's kind of a nice place to force yourself. But a lot of it is just watching stuff. I'm working on a shot right now for this school in Spain, and I had to do a dance sequence at the beginning of it. And so immediately I go, well, okay, I Google or YouTube some dance stuff. You watch them dance and see what they do and really study the mechanics of it. But then I went, that's not funny enough. And I'm like, I want figure skating, like really cheesy, you know, arms thrown out all over the place. And again, it's just kind of pulling down videos. Even if you watch them in slow motion, you can go, you see what they're doing. You see the overlap in the body and the pushing up and how the spine contorts. And that's the stuff you exaggerate and pull your poses from, is the extremes that happen and stuff that you're just watching. But the CSI thing that's where I usually start, to force myself to make interesting poses, you know.
Right. And it's all about, I guess, like referencing and practice and looking at what other people do.
And life drawing. I mean, to me, life drawing classes are essential to everything, because you study gesture and force and balance and weight, and it's awesome. It teaches you so much.
Do you have any advice as to how to, because Andrew asks that he has difficulty separating the line of action from the spine, which often isn't necessarily the same thing.
No, it's not. It is, I define it as from the back of the heels to the top of the head.
Is it the line of action or the spine?
The line of action through the body.
Okay.
And it comes from the gesture in the body. To me, this is just me. I mean, I don't really know if there's an official explanation, but to me, there is a point where the force is starting, which might be from the feet or might be from the hands pushing or something, and that's sort of the origin of that line. And then where does that gesture finish? Where does the power that just went through the body, the force, terminate, you know? And that could be the top of the head. That could be all the way out to a fingertip. That could be a shoulder, you know. And that's, if you can draw the line from that origin of force through the termination of force, and it's nice and simple, and you're not breaking the body in between and interrupting that line, then you're doing good, because then you can shape, you can move your hips over and adjust the neck even to, you know, flow through, and it just, if that makes sense, that's how I define it. Somebody else might do it differently.
I think that makes good sense. How far is too far when you're posing a character?
Yeah, I like that. this is just me. Like, you heard me talk about starting with organic stuff. Like, if you are breaking the body, if you are breaking something that a human, like a person would look at and go, oh, that's broken, or oh, that doesn't look right. If you're distracting somebody from your story, then you've probably gone too far. If anatomically, even in your character's own personal anatomy, you might even be doing a character that is not even a known creature, but you set up rules about how their anatomy works, then you can start there and exaggerate that shape and that force so that there's not a second that I don't believe that what I'm watching is happening. There's not a second that I'm distracted and go, ugh, what just happened there? Or why is that eye suddenly giant? Or, I don't, so I think, yeah, breaking something to the point of distraction to me is always too far.
Yeah, you don't want to take people out of your story. You want
Right.
to leave them in it the entire time.
Right. Suck them in even more.
Exactly. Why don't you pick the next question? Whatever you'd like to answer.
I'm using Sketchbook Pro's new flipbook function, by the way. What animation program I'm using right there.
Okay, do you like it?
It's awesome because I sketch in Sketchbook Pro all the time. So to be able to go that one farther step and just do quick animatics.
How expensive was it, if you don't mind me asking?
You have to do the membership now, which is like, I want to say it's only like $30 a year or something really cheap. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. And then you'll get like free updates and all that stuff to it?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, I feel like all of my major software now I have those memberships for, like Adobe.
I have Adobe Creative Cloud and all that stuff. Are you drawing on a tablet, by the way?
Yep, I've just got a Cintiq down, but like I got a monitor up here and a Cintiq down below.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's comfy that way. And I'll do Maya in this too that way too, so I can actually like push and pull the character. So.
Wow, Maya's the 3D program?
Yeah, that's what I work in the most right now. I work in Toon Boom a lot when I'm doing, like professional 2D stuff. And the like Geome, the Crackerbox stuff was all done in Toon Boom. But the new Crackerbox stuff, the Wizard stuff, here I'll actually, can I shamelessly
do it? Plug away. Everyone needs to
get like a little sneak preview. This is total pantomime. I know we might be going over time a little bit. I apologize.
It's okay. I have nothing scheduled after this.
Here, let's see. Let me find the folder. So I've got some final renders of some of this stuff. So I'm working on a Crackerbox project right now. Let me share screen, which is my other project, crackerboxstudio.com, which is that's my real pursuit right now is children. It's not children's, but just educational animation. Let me screen share again. And so I'm working on a piece that kind of demystifies, or is going to try to demystify. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Hang on a second. How do I get out of this? Hang on. Hit escape. There we go. Sorry. It's got this new expander thing in Yosemite. I'm working on this this thing that demystifies the personal computer. It's going to try to demystify the personal computer. I'm doing little episodes of this, and this is part of the prologue of it. And I'm working solely in pantomime acting. This is CG, this is in Maya, and this is all rigged characters with hair and cloth and stuff done on live action plates, miniature live action plates. But like a shot like this, I don't know if the frame rate's going to be very big, but I don't have dialogue. I just have to communicate what this wizard's doing right off the bat. Is he manipulating these glowing things? Does he care about it? Is he frustrated? Is he very concentrated? All of these characters, and this little guy who's just super happy, same kind of thing. Like he's sitting there just.
I like him.
But if you look, like every time I change a pose, there's a C curve through there. He goes up to, he reverses that C curve, and I've got that gestural flow through the arm, so I can tell really what his intent is, and he dives into that, and as he throws this up, whoosh, he goes from an S curve right there, that's the wind up, that's the energy coming up the body, and fling, and he goes to a reverse C curve. And it's 4 very simple key poses that I could just flow together and make it work. So that's that kind of stuff. That's what I work in Maya, is CG stuff, and learn late at night how to do particle effects. So, yeah, anyway.
Awesome.
So,
And
yeah.
someone mentioned that you also are wearing smudge guard, too.
I am wearing smudge guard. Gives away the Cintiq. I don't have carpal tunnel. Those are my students. Somebody always asks at least once, do you have carpal tunnel?
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet.
All right. So pick your next question.
Oh, let's see. Finding it endlessly fascinating how this little vocalizations to inform your drawing. I know.
I loved it as well.
I'm actually doing a tutorial video right now. I just did like demo recording. It's kind of like just like this, and I found that I had to cut so many of those because I just kept going. Blah!
I think they're awesome. You should leave them.
Kind of live through. That might be like to connect it with the how do you find good poses. You have to live through the character that moment, and you have to be able to stay in the moment. Sometimes for weeks, and just sit at your desk and go wah, wah, like over and over and over to just see if it's feeling right. So if you're a person that digs that, you're in the right field.
Right?
Yeah.
To look silly while you're looking at your desk, like, why does he look so angry? Drawing an angry pose.
I mean, you should always have one of these. You've got to have.
Go.
Yeah. So.
Do you ever use those, like, I see them all the time in art stores, like those pose things? Or do you not use that at all?
I used to. I just video stuff, or like turn on the webcam and just take shots of things or hand poses or something, just to kind of study it. But so much of it you can just do in front of the mirror, because you do have to. That's if there's like, if I could leave a mantra, is to get up out of your chair. That's the real trick, is to stand up and go, what does my body do when I jump up and down? How do my shoulders shake? How fat am I? And does my fat jiggle? You just feel that, and then you can go, I know how I can animate that. I just felt the timing of that. So anyway, yeah.
Awesome. So living out your characters is how to make real characters.
Yeah, you do.
All right. A few more questions.
Okay.
How about let's do, Marley says he really struggles with coming up with a few poses from his head, and he relies on reference a lot. Would you give him any advice as to like start doing it on his own?
Yeah, that's awesome, because I spend most of my class, that's kind of I'm a get off of reference evangelist. This is why I'm doing this thing at CTN, because there is a point, reference is just reference. And I think when I was leaving DreamWorks, there was a really heavy reliance on really reproducing reference. I mean, you guys have seen the trailers, if not seen Rise of the Guardians and all, I was like, I don't like that. Like, what happened to cartoons? Like, can we? That's why Megamind was so fun. And so there's a point. You should be studying your reference to study it, and you should be studying to go, what is it like? Everything I was just talking about. What's happening in the skeleton, and what's happening with the stuff hanging off that skeleton, and what's happening to the springs that are attached to that skeleton, our muscles, and what muscles am I using in my face, and what's the limited amount? Like, really kind of start studying what you're doing on camera in depth, so that then you can abstract it. And if you start abstracting it, if you start going, well, the thing that I'm really reading is the arched back and my clenched fist and my gritted teeth or something, and you just really pick out things to exaggerate into caricature, because you've studied it, those things stay in your head. And then you have to start challenging yourself to go off of video reference and start trying to wing it on your own. Like start going without a net on purpose. I'll show you. Well, I won't show you, but oftentimes with video reference, what I'll do is pull out just video stills. Like I'll stop the reference and I'll say that moment reads, and I want that, and I'll save that as a still. Save still, like 6 stills, and then I put my video reference away, and I have to figure it out. Like I make it a game. I have to know that to get the core of my body from there to there, I might need to dip and push my leg back up. You know, and that's going to push my head down, and that's going to create a nice arc, and then it'll be really pretty, and I can do some overlap, and you can start adding from there. But the mechanics, you challenge yourself to start making it up. But starting with reference is great, but don't just go like, okay, go to frame 1, then to frame 4, then to frame 6, and just keep recreating poses. Study it and try to do it more from your imagination. That's where you get the cool cartooning from.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, Sif says, hold on. Sif has been a lovely member of our network for quite some time now.
I know.
And I think Sif makes, or her like friend makes, I'm pretty sure she makes the actual like smudge guards that you can get on her Etsy store. Yeah, she makes them, and they're like. I
always get the little note from that woman. I love that.
Yeah, they're awesome and colorful, and you should totally get one. Everyone in the network should get some of Sif's because they're a lot more fun than just the boring black ones.
So boring.
It's kind of boring. It's a little boring. Anyway, so a little shameless plug there. Okay, so pick the next question you would like to answer. Well,
Sif's asking a great question about how you make a character look like they're trying to stop in the middle of a movement.
Mm-hmm.
This is a shameless plug, but the last tutorial video I just made talks about that kind of stuff extensively. It's called Push It, and it's about taking extreme movement and trying to animate with it. And things like there's the opposite side of that. There is how do you make a character look like they're building up enough force to achieve a really forceful movement, and how do you make them look like they're absorbing it properly from what they just, if they were moving, like, let's check this out. Hang on. Oh, see, I keep wanting to pull stuff up, but I don't want to keep screen sharing. But if you look at things like Roadrunner, perfect example. Roadrunner goes, he's cruising, and then he goes, and he stops. And that jiggle is not, that little springy jiggle is not just because it's cartoony and funny. It's because those feet are suddenly stopping static on the ground. So the body has to describe something that says, I'm absorbing that momentum. So again, it's still Newtonian physics you have to obey, but you're saying, I'm going to bend the rules to suit my timing and to get a laugh. You could, there's the staggering that cartoons do too, but if you've ever slammed on your brakes in your car, that's what your car does. It goes, so that's, again, it's real physics, and there's so many devices you can use to start with, and then imagine that you then kind of extrapolate from there, and you take if your character has a big nose, that jiggle also makes an overlapping action of and the ears do that, or there's a vibration that kind of goes from the bottom up to the top, like you got to start with the real and then start walking beyond it. But it's still, you still have to be prepared to describe force properly.
Awesome. That was very, it made complete sense to me. Michael keeps asking how you started animation. So why don't I know we went over it a little bit in the beginning, which, by the way, everyone, you can re-watch this if you missed the start. It's going to be live on our Channel Frederator Network YouTube account. But why don't we just briefly go over real quick how you got into the animation business?
Totally organic. I did not have any thoughts about being an animator. I was acting. I was playing music. I played music for 20 years, touring in bands, and I was designing out of necessity, graphic designing, and that became kind of a job, and that became doing websites, and that became learning Flash, and that became a friend of mine wanting to create a short film, and that just was the epiphany moment. I went, oh my God, I'm supposed to be animating. And I just literally stopped everything and started from scratch and was doing free work for, on labels and stuff, and and then was like, well, I want to work. And Calabash Animation was in Chicago, and they were doing really fun cartoon commercials. So I was like, well, that's where I want to work. And I went and I talked to the owner of Calabash. I was like this 32-year-old rocker, that was like, I want to animate. What do I got to do? And he was so nice and talked to me about what I could do. And 3 years later, I was working at his studio. And that led to kind of joining the Animation Mentor Network, and that led to DreamWorks, and then, so I went from some independent freelance to a major studio back to independent, of course.
What was the name of the short film that you worked on?
We never released it. It was called Loose Change, and it was about all these little, the adventures of pieces of trash in the sewer. And a dollar bill was the lead character. It was fun. I still have all the old. Yeah, in fact, if you go to my YouTube page, the Splatfrog page,
youtube.com/splatfrog.
Yes.
I
think it's Splatfrog 13 is the.
Oh yeah, Splatfrog 13 is the actual.
The name of the page is splatfrog.com, and if you go down to the throwback animations, I think I called it, you'll see some test animation from it. It's terrible. It's like I had no idea what I was doing, just trying it out in Flash. But I just went.
I had to start somewhere.
I know, but I was like, I have to do this. So it's fun to look at.
So 2 more questions.
Okay.
Let's do because you freelance, right?
Right.
So how do you figure out your pay rate? Is it based on experience?
Yeah, I try to look at how I try to bill by the second, as weird as that sounds. That's my formula. I was like, how long might it take me to produce a second of animation in hours? And I try to go through the process. Does that mean I have to do roughs, and then I have to do inks, and then I have to do finals, or I have to model and rig, and what are the process, and try to really come to figure it out by the hour, and then I add up the seconds of the final piece, and I go, that's how much it's going to cost. And then I double it if I can. Because this crap is always going to go wrong, and they're always going to ask for something extra, or they're always going to ask you to bring your price down. So that's if you ask any freelancer,
price ever.
That's a big rule. It's just how much is it going to be, and then double it.
No, as sometimes I do freelance video projects, and that's totally the case, because they're going to have notes, and they're going to want you to change stuff. And they're like, oh, real quick, I need you to send this high-res file for me in an hour. And you're like, oh, great, thanks.
Right.
It's client work is it's fun being your own boss, but working for clients is often oh my gosh.
And especially in animation, because most people don't understand the process, so they think, you're almost done, and they're like, I've been looking at it, and I really think they need to do this other thing. And you're like, you realize that's 2 weeks back.
Yeah, it's a whole nother cartoon you're asking for.
And if there's a middleman in there, then they're like, oh, but we got to keep him happy. And you're like, okay, but I'm going to charge you.
Right.
So you can choose to charge them. Animation's different. You really got to be. That's why the doubling thing is so important, because you just got to prepare for stupid things to happen.
So let's just do the last question, and then we'll sign off.
Okay.
Any particular cartoons that inspire you?
Chuck Jones. Done.
Well, that was a shorter answer than I thought it was going to be.
That was my generation.
Is there a particular cartoon of his that you like the most?
I loved when Chuck Jones did Tom and Jerry. I loved the Chuck Jones versions, although the Tex Avery ones are good. But when he was doing Warner Brothers stuff, Warner Brothers stuff, Wile E. Coyote is one of the best cartoon characters ever. I could watch, and when they did him in CG, my jaw dropped. I'm like, you did it. You know, it's so great. So yeah, Chuck Jones. I mean, even I'm like I am a Grinch, and I love The Grinch Stole Christmas. I love just watching the curly lines and all the little fuzzy. Oh, he's great. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ken, especially for even going above and beyond an extra 20 minutes after live stream. Thank you, everyone that hopped on and asked questions and stuck around. Definitely check out Ken's website because he has lots of animation tutorials for everyone because he is a teacher, and I don't know if you could tell, but he's very animated about this stuff. Get it? Animation joke. Anyway, so yeah, that website is splatfrog.com, and he also has a few YouTube channels because he is a member of the network, just like you guys, which it's youtube.com/splatfrog13, and also Crackerbox Studio is yours as well.
Yep.
So definitely go check those out. If you have any extra questions for Ken that we didn't get around to answering, you can email me directly at jennifer@frederator.com, and then I can forward them over to Ken, and he can answer them at his leisure.
Chat via the YouTube page, too.
Yeah, or the YouTube page, and I'm sure you probably have a contact on your website as well. Yeah? Cool.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to add?
Nothing. Thank you for inviting me to come do this. It's fun.
No problem. Maybe we'll do another live stream where it's more like in depth of your background and animation and how you got to where you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that. So thank you everyone for joining. It's going to be, this particular live stream will be available now and forever on youtube.com/channelfrednetwork. And you can check it out again and rewatch it over and over again if you want. So I will see you around.
All right.
All right. Have a good day, Ken. Bye, everybody.
See you later. Bye.